You're watching Channel Japan. Next up is Dream Weavers, in which we introduce the technologies and techniques of small Japanese companies.
This time we'll be looking at a company in Wakayama Prefecture called Wada Mediyasu. Now we have a video over here to show their machines, but to make the best knits possible, it continues to use 100-year-old loop wheel knitting machines.
Well, they're moving very slowly.
They are, aren't they? And these machines knit about 1 meter of fabric every hour, or about 10 meters a day, so it's certainly not an efficient process. But compared to knits made by high-speed machines, they're said to be more durable, and they have a soft texture as if air was weaved in.
But maintaining machines that were made 100 years ago must be a lot of work.
You're right. And Mr. Wada, the president, studied on his own how to improve the machines. And he says each of the 120 machines has its own personality. And he says he can tell what's wrong with them just by hearing the sounds they make.
Well, I understand acquiring those skills wasn't easy.
It wasn't, and he says from the time when he was 18 years old, it took him 20 years to finally be able to repair the machines on his own. And he also studied electrical circuitry and computers to further modify them, and he can now produce even border patterns.
Well, he's certainly quite studious.
He certainly is. And while the company is on a roll now, getting to this point was a continual struggle. So take a look.
Half past 5 in the morning, when it's still quiet. They say there's a company president who starts working at this early hour. There he is. Around here, he's called the eccentric of Wakayama. The president of Wada Mediyasu, Yasufumi Wada. Mr. Wada is operating 100-year-old machines. They were brought here from abroad in the Meiji period, around the dawn of the 20th century. Mediyasu is a word that refers to knitting machines.
I only sleep about 3 or 4 hours.
Being old, the machines are not easy to operate for most people, with the exception of Mr. Wada. What's more, each can only knit 1 meter of fabric an hour. Even with the machines running from morning to night, they're barely able to keep up with orders. This is a true analog-era factory, a living fossil. Fabric knitting is an industry on the decline in Japan, squeezed out by lower-cost products from overseas. Even in such an age, they decided to bet their survival on low-tech machines. So, what's different about Wada Mediyasu's fabrics? Visiting the company is creator Saki Chikadaishi.
Hello. Yes, hello.
She's dressed in peculiar-looking clothes.
This is one of my works. It's based on a spacesuit motif.
Ms. Chikadaishi has a slightly strange title of hyper-knit creator. She's exhibited her artwork, knits made with threads and needles, around the country. She adds knits to all kinds of things found on city streets, transforming the everyday landscape. In the Meiji period, at the turn of the 20th century, knitting machines from abroad arrived in Japan. From that time and into the post-World War II period, Wakayama Prefecture thrived as the country's top knit producer. In 1957, Mr. Wada's father founded the business. And in the 1960s, there was a van jacket boom in Japan. They made the fabrics of those jackets and earned a reputation for quality. In 1973, when Mr. Wada was 24 years old, he married Shigeko. In 1983, he became the second-generation president, just as Japan was entering the so-called bubble era.
Japan was in a bubble. At that time, it was quantity over quality, and everyone switched to the latest machines.
So these machines stopped being used.
Mr. Wada collected old machines that people had stopped using and decided to face the mass production age head-on with them. The reason for his resolve was the difference in the strength of fabrics. The tensile strength of fabrics made by the latest machines was 3.5 kilograms compared to 7 kilograms of those made by the old machines.
It's the same with anything else. The age of mass production won't last forever. There's a wave. I believe that one day the age of quality would arrive.
But their production efficiency was about 1/100th that of factories with new machines. Unable to fill large orders, they started losing major clients. While Japan was in the midst of a bubble, this family of 4 had to live on 20,000 yen a month.
I asked my sister, "I'm sorry, but can you go get money from home? From our parents' home?"
Swallowing his pride, he asked people close to him to help him financially. Almost at a breaking point, the president was encouraged by something his wife said.
We almost didn't have enough to eat. But she said she'd work harder and wanted me to study. I think it was toughest on her.
Shigeko at times carried fabrics that were heavy even for a man to deliver to clients. She also checked product quality without rest. Day after day, she continued to work, supporting the company. Because of the heavy materials she had to deal with at work, her fingers became bent, and she says the pain occasionally returns even to this day. Mr. Wada, meanwhile, at night, after finishing work, he devoted himself to studying, as his wife asked. Until the early morning hours, he studied electrical engineering and read books on economics, absorbing various types of knowledge.
You start to see basically how things will turn out. If you're starting out, rather than starting out in good times, if you start when you're at the bottom, you'll grow.
Eventually, a quality-focused age would arrive. Believing that, he started putting a shine on his old factory. What's more, he foresaw the eco-friendly age over 15 years before his rivals and started making his factory more energy efficient. He built a controller to limit the rotations of his loop wheel knitting machines by hand.
Our monthly electricity bill is about 40,000 yen and change.
What? 40,000 yen? For such a big space?
It became a true one-of-a-kind factory and entered the age of the fast fashion wave. Other knitting factories relocated overseas or were forced to close. There's one apparel maker with which they were able to survive that age.
As everyone was going overseas, we discussed how to make something different from products manufactured overseas, how to differentiate ourselves. We thought if we use Mr. Wada's loop wheel knitting machine and use select yarns and unique knitting methods, we might be able to survive. Without Mr. Wada, we wouldn't have been able to continue operating until now, so he's an irreplaceable partner going forward.
The business has actually stabilized only in the past 3 years. Consumers who focus on quality are slowly increasing. Sales have also finally broken above 100 million yen. The times are finally catching up with Wada Mediyasu.
Every person has things he or she likes. I believe the best choice is following that path. If you don't take action, you'll regret it later. Rather than taking action and regretting, I think not taking action and regretting will end up weighing more heavily on you afterwards.
And now, there's a new light of hope for Wada Mediyasu. Mr. Wada's son, Yasuyuki. He's following right behind his father.
I want to master the machines as well as the president. That's my aim. I'm not interested in anything other than that. This work is really deep and complex.
Mr. Wada's son has only started to understand the struggles and joys of working with simple and honest analog machines every day. Ms. Chikaraishi has spent a day watching the people of Wada Mediyasu at work. She saw them carefully protecting old machines that make products unlike any other. Now what will she make for them?
I really felt that they are working hard together, as one family. It's a really good company. I'm hoping to make something that'll be loved by the whole family and kept in the company. Thank you very much.
Ms. Chikaraishi returns to Tokyo and starts working on a piece to cheer on the company. Her piece arrives in Wakayama. What is it? It looks like nothing more than a toy stuffed inside a used can.
Hello, Mr. Wada. I was moved by your work, so I also tried making a knitting machine. A spool knitting machine.
It's a spool knitting machine.
What a wonderful idea.
The way she thinks is completely different.
Some people may remember spool knitting as children. She turned it into a unique shape. Stuffed inside the can are toys and dolls. Apparently, each acts as a needle. It pays homage to Mr. Wada, who continued to use old machines without throwing them away.
In the end, it was all about quality. That's the impression I had after going to that factory and actually feeling the knits. Hearing him say that the most important thing is to do what you like really gave me confidence.
Will they really be able to knit with it? Shigeko gives it a try.
Okay, that's one round.
Before long, the granddaughter is into it as well.
This is fun, isn't it?
And finally, a handmade knitted fabric is finished.
Was it fun? If you use this, it's a big stitch. And here, a small stitch. You're right. Amazing! Her ideas are completely different from ours.
With ideas different from those of others, Wada Mediyasu has continued to knit surprising products. Simple and honest may be the best way forward.
And that brings us to the end of this edition of Channel Japan. We have much more in store for you, so join us again next week.